Story 1. When I gave birth to my daughter Mia, I expected the exhaustion, the late nights, the crying fits. What I didn't expect was how quiet our house would feel after 9 p.m., like the walls were holding their breath. My husband works night shifts as an ER nurse, so I was often alone with Mia in our small suburban home. She was 3 months old when I first noticed something off. I'd put her down in the crib and set the baby monitor beside me in the living room. It was the kind with audio and motion detection. Most nights it would stay quiet, maybe a soft rustling if she moved. But that night, around 1:30 a.m., I heard a click, then static, then something that made my heart stop. A low humming sound, like someone singing a lullaby, too softly to make out the words. My first instinct was that the monitor had picked up a neighbor's signal. Maybe someone else nearby had the same brand. I muted it, walked to Mia's room and checked. She was sound asleep. No music, no humming, nothing. The monitor remained silent the rest of the night. I brushed it off as interference. The next evening, I noticed the humming again. Same time, same low tone. I sat frozen on the couch staring at the monitor. Then I heard it. 3 soft taps like fingernails against wood. Then silence. I bolted to the nursery. Empty. Still. Mia was breathing peacefully. Her tiny hands curled against her cheeks. The room smelled of baby powder and lavender. Normal. I started to feel crazy. Maybe it was sleep deprivation, but I couldn't shake the tension in my chest. I didn't tell my husband. Didn't want to sound paranoid. But over the next week, the monitor got worse. The humming grew louder. I could almost hear words. Then I heard what sounded like breathing. Not Mia's soft, rhythmic puffs, but something deeper. Adult. Slow. Heavy. I unplugged the monitor that night and brought Mia into my room. I didn't sleep. I just watched her. At 3:12 a.m., she woke up screaming. No whimper, no cry. Just one long, terrified scream. I held her, rocked her, but she wouldn't calm down. Her eyes were wide. She stared at the dark hallway like something was standing there. The next morning, I checked the nursery. Nothing disturbed. Nothing moved. But the closet door was open. I always closed it. Always. I started keeping a log of what I heard. Each night, the same pattern. 1:30 a.m. humming. 1:37. Tapping. 1:41. Breathing. And always from the monitor. Never in person. I decided to record it. I set up my phone next to the monitor and let it run. The next morning I played it back. At first, static. Then, a faint melody. It sent chills up my spine. It wasn't a song I recognized, but it was slow, childlike, off-key. Then a whisper, "Don't cry." My blood ran cold. It wasn't my voice. It wasn't my husband's. And it sure wasn't Mia's. I showed the clip to my friend Lily, who's into audio tech. She listened and turned pale. "That's not interference," she said. "That's proximity audio. It's close." I replaced the monitor with a new one. A different brand. Thought maybe it was a fluke. The new one worked fine for 2 nights. No sounds. Then, on the 3rd night, I was lying in bed with Mia next to me when I heard the closet door creak in her room. The door I had locked. I grabbed the baby monitor screen and looked. The camera was pointed at the crib. The room looked normal, until I saw movement. In the bottom right corner, the tiniest shadow slid across the floor. I blinked. It was gone. The next morning, I checked the closet. Nothing inside. But one of Mia's stuffed animals was on the floor, face down, halfway between the crib and the door. I hadn't put it there. That night, I stayed awake, determined to catch whatever it was. I left the closet light on. I made sure Mia was asleep in my bed. I turned the monitor toward the door. At 1:33 a.m., humming. At 1:39, tapping. At 1:42, the monitor turned off. Not lost signal. Not battery. It shut off. Like someone had pressed the power button. I sat in silence for a full minute before I heard a knock from inside the nursery wall. 3 soft, deliberate knocks. I grabbed Mia and ran to the car. We slept in a hotel. My husband thought I was having a breakdown until he listened to the recording. Then he changed all the locks. We had the walls inspected. No animals, no wiring issues. But the baby monitor? It still turns on sometimes, even when unplugged. And every time, at exactly 1:30 a.m., it hums. After that night, I didn't want to go back, but we couldn't afford to stay out forever. My husband reassured me it was probably stress. Postpartum paranoia, he called it. Easy to say when you're not the one alone at night. We moved Mia's crib into our bedroom. I put away the monitor, disconnected it, shoved it in a drawer. But something about the house still felt wrong. Cold in places it shouldn't be. Like walking into a spot where someone had just been standing. Days passed without anything too strange. Just little things. Mia wakes up at exactly the same time every night. 1:30 a.m., crying. Always looking toward the hallway. Always pointing. We didn't talk about it. Until one night, I woke up gasping. No reason. Just this overwhelming feeling that I couldn't breathe. I looked at Mia. She was still asleep, but her mouth was moving. No sound, like she was whispering. Her tiny hands were twitching. Eyes closed tight. My husband sat up and asked what was wrong. I didn't answer, because I didn't know. I was terrified, but couldn't explain why. The next day, I checked the drawer. The monitor had turned on. Its light was green. It had no battery. I hadn't plugged it in, yet it was on. I turned it to face the wall and left it alone. That night, around 1:25 a.m., I sat on the bed and stared at the hallway, waiting. At 1:30 on the dot, the door creaked, not all the way, just enough to make the hinge groan. Then I heard it, the lullaby, not from the monitor, from the hallway itself, humming, slow, gentle, a woman's voice. My husband didn't wake up. He never did. I stood up slowly, moved to the door, and opened it just a crack. The hallway was empty, but the humming continued, coming from the nursery, even though we never went in there anymore. I took 3 steps and stopped. The air felt different, heavy. I reached for the light switch and flipped it on. Nothing. The bulb didn't respond, but the humming got louder. I whispered Mia's name and stepped inside. The room was freezing. The air smelled metallic, like iron or old pennies. The crib was empty, of course, but the closet door was wide open. I hadn't touched it in days. Inside, I saw something I'll never forget. Hanging from the top shelf was the monitor cord. Just the cord. No monitor. The screen lay shattered on the floor, and carved into the drywall were 3 words. Not written. Carved. Deep, angry gouges. She is mine. I stumbled back, slammed the door, grabbed Mia, and didn't look back. We left that night. Drove to my sister's place, 2 towns over. Slept with the lights on. We didn't return for weeks. When we finally did, it was only to pack up. We listed the house. Didn't mention anything. Just said we had to relocate for work. A young couple bought it. Newlyweds. No kids. We moved into a new place with more sunlight. Open floor plan. No creaky doors. No closets that stayed cold. Mia started sleeping through the night. I started to feel normal again. For a while. Then last week, Mia came into our room at 1:30 a.m., holding something. It was the baby monitor. I didn't know how she'd found it. I didn't even know we still had it. She handed it to me, face pale. "The singing lady says you're not listening," she whispered. I looked at the monitor. It was on, glowing, and from the tiny speaker came that same lullaby. Off-key, soft, slow. "She's coming back," Mia said. I threw the monitor in the trash that morning, took the trash straight to the curb. But last night the humming came again. Not from a speaker, from inside the walls. Our new walls. And Mia didn't cry this time. She hummed along. Story 2. When my son Tyler turned 5, he started talking to someone named Mr. Blue. At first, I thought it was cute. Imaginary friends are normal at that age. He'd sit in the living room and have full-blown conversations with empty space, pausing to let someone else answer. My wife and I even joked about it. We'd say, "Tell Mr. Blue dinner's ready," or "Does Mr. Blue want pancakes too?" But then Tyler began mentioning things he shouldn't know. Personal things. Things we had never said around him. One night while I was tucking him in, he said, "Daddy, Mr. Blue says you used to cry in your treehouse when Grandpa yelled at you." I froze. I hadn't thought about that in over 25 years. I used to hide in the treehouse behind my childhood home when things got rough. I never told Tyler, never told my wife. It was something I had buried, something no 5-year-old could guess. I asked, "Did Mommy tell you that?" Tyler shook his head. "No, Mr. Blue watches you." My skin went cold. I told myself it was a coincidence, a lucky guess, a fragment from a story I might have once told in passing. But more details came. Mr. Blue knew where I kept the spare key. He knew my high school locker combination. He knew my mom's maiden name. I started asking questions. "What does Mr. Blue look like?" Tyler said. "He's tall, no hair. He doesn't blink. His eyes are all black like marbles." I laughed nervously. "That's creepy, buddy." Tyler shrugged. "He says he used to live here before we did. We bought the house 3 years ago, built in the 70s. Nothing strange on the record. Quiet neighborhood. The backyard backed up to woods, which Tyler never liked going near. That same week, my wife called me at work. Her voice was tight. "You need to talk to Tyler. He told me Mr. Blue said I shouldn't trust you." "What does that mean?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "But he also said I shouldn't go into the basement." Our basement was mostly for storage. Unfinished. Cold. But she sounded genuinely scared. That night, I sat with Tyler and asked, "Why did Mr. Blue say that about Mommy?" He frowned. "He says the basement is his place, and Mommy keeps moving things." I stared at him. "What things?" Tyler paused. "The box." "What box?" I asked again. "The one with the red letters," he whispered. I didn't know what he meant, but something about his tone unsettled me. The next morning, I went into the basement. There were old boxes, holiday decorations, books, paint cans. I scanned each one, looking for anything unusual. Finally, in the far corner, behind an old dresser, I found it. A wooden box, carved, dusty, with red painted letters that had faded over time. It was locked. I never put it there. I asked my wife if she knew about it. She didn't. We opened it together with a crowbar. Inside were items that didn't belong to us. Old photographs, brittle and yellowed. A journal with pages in a tight, angry hand, and a small cassette recorder. The journal belonged to someone named Paul Dunner. The last entry read, "He's still down there. He never left. He says he's always watching." We researched the name. A man named Paul Dunner lived in the house in the early 90s. He disappeared. Nobody ever found. The case was cold. I felt nauseous. That night, Tyler wouldn't go to bed. "Mr. Blue was mad," he said. "He didn't want you to find the box." He cried for hours. We tried calming him down, but every time we turned off the lights, he screamed. "He's watching through the ceiling," he sobbed. "He wants me to come to the basement." That was the moment I decided we needed help. We reached out to a child therapist. She listened patiently, then suggested maybe Tyler was processing something subconsciously. She wasn't convinced it was paranormal. But that changed after she came to the house. Tyler drew a picture during his session. A tall figure with black eyes, no mouth, standing in the basement doorway. In the picture, the figure had one hand on Tyler's shoulder. The therapist paled when she saw it. "Has he ever had night terrors?" she asked. I shook my head. "Sleepwalking? Never." That night, around 3 a.m., I heard a thud. I ran to Tyler's room. Empty. My heart stopped. I checked the bathroom. Nothing. Kitchen. Nothing. Then I heard a voice, faint, rhythmic humming coming from the basement door. I ran. The door was open. Tyler stood at the bottom of the stairs, eyes open, not blinking, whispering to someone in the dark. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs, staring down into the basement, watching my son whisper into the darkness. He didn't react to my voice when I called his name. Not even a blink. He just kept murmuring under his breath. I rushed down the steps and touched his shoulder. He jumped like he'd been burned and screamed, loud, panicked. "Don't touch me!" He said, "You're not supposed to touch me when I'm talking to him." I backed away, completely stunned. "Tyler, it's Daddy. You're safe. Come here." He looked at me, eyes wide, then ran up the stairs past me into his room. My wife was awake by then, holding him, crying. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't have to. The next day, I locked the basement. Tyler didn't speak all morning. Wouldn't eat, just kept drawing. Pictures of Mr. Blue. Always with no face, just those dark marble eyes. Always near the basement door. I told the therapist everything. She recommended a full psychological evaluation. But that night, Tyler spoke again. "He says you're making it worse." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Locking him down there," he said. "That makes him angry." I didn't sleep. At around 3 a.m., the smoke alarms went off. We scrambled out of bed, panicked. But there was no fire, no smoke, just that shrill, piercing scream echoing through every room, all of them triggered at once. The next morning, I found Tyler's door covered in tiny scratches, hundreds of them, not like a child's fingernails, more like a knife or claws, thin, straight, deliberate, and on the wall, written in thick black marker, "Let him up." I asked Tyler if he were even during the day, started flinching when we mentioned the basement. One afternoon, he pointed at the ceiling and said, "That's where he waits now, in the corners, behind the paint." I didn't even know what that meant. That same night, we heard something moving in the vents, crawling. We checked them. Nothing. At least nothing visible. But the grates were warm, like someone had been breathing into them. My wife begged me to move. Just leave. Burn the house down if we had to, but we were stuck. Money tight. No buyers. No help. I tried blessing the house. I wasn't religious, but I had to try something. A friend gave me holy water. I sprinkled it along the basement stairs, whispering prayers I barely remembered, and then the stairs cracked. Every step. One after another, like bones snapping under pressure. That night, Tyler didn't come out of his room. He just sat there on his bed facing the corner. When I entered, he didn't move, didn't blink. I asked what he was doing. He said, "Listening. He's telling me your secrets again." I almost threw up. I told my wife to take Tyler to her sister's. Just go. Don't come back. I'd stay behind, handle it. That night, I opened the basement. Saturday at the top of the stairs. "What do you want?" I asked. The air turned cold. Something brushed past me. Fast, sharp, angry, like wind with teeth. Then a voice whispered in my ear, "You brought him here." I turned around. No one there. I shouted, "I don't even know who you are." Then the light bulbs burst. Every single one. Glass rained down the hallway. I didn't go back in. I slept in the garage. 2 weeks later, we moved. Rented a 1-bedroom across town. Simple, clean, quiet. Tyler didn't say a word the first 3 nights. Just curled up in a sleeping bag beside us. But then he smiled, laughed. It was the first time I'd seen him laugh in months. We started to believe maybe, just maybe, .it was over. Until he asked me a question I'll never forget. "Daddy," he said, "is it okay if Mr. Blue visits just sometimes?" I froze. "You still talk to him?" Tyler shook his head. "Number," but he said he'd wait outside the window until we're ready to let him in again. Story 3. I used to babysit for my sister-in-law every Friday night. Her daughter, Lily, was barely 9 months old. Chubby cheeks, huge eyes, always laughing at the smallest things. I loved her like my own. My sister-in-law, Rachel, was a nurse and worked night shifts. Her husband had left a few months after Lily was born, so she leaned on me a lot. I didn't mind. I was a night owl anyway, but there was one night I can't forget, when something happened that never should have. It started normally. I arrived at 6 p.m. Rachel gave me Lily's schedule, a bottle, and her usual instructions. Bath at 7, bedtime by 8. Then she kissed Lily goodbye and left. I spent the evening playing peekaboo, watching cartoons, feeding her mashed bananas. It was quiet, peaceful. Around 8:15, I rocked her to sleep, laid her in the crib, and turned on the baby monitor. Rachel's place was small, just one floor. I made myself tea and curled up on the couch with my laptop. Everything was fine until I heard static. It wasn't loud, just enough to be noticeable. I checked the monitor screen. Black and white fuzz. I tapped the device. Nothing. I thought maybe the signal dropped. I got up to check the nursery. As I approached the door, I paused. The hallway was unusually cold. Still, the kind of stillness that presses on your skin. I opened the door slowly. Lily was still in the crib, asleep, but something was off. The air felt heavier. I looked at the monitor camera on the shelf. .it was pointing toward the wall, not where I had left it. I was sure I had aimed it directly at the crib. I adjusted it, scanned the room. Nothing seemed out of place. I left the door open a crack and went back to the living room. The screen was back. Lily is sleeping soundly. I watched for a while just to be sure. Around 10 p.m., I heard a whisper. I froze. The monitor had no audio back channel, just a one-way mic from Lily's room. But the whisper didn't come from it. It came from behind me. I turned, nothing. Then I heard it again. Not a word, just a long, breathy hiss. I ran to the hallway. The nursery door was wide open. I had only left it slightly ajar. I stepped in. Lily was crying softly now, still lying down, but her eyes weren't looking at me. They were locked onto the corner of the room. A shadow loomed there, darker than the rest of the room, not shaped like anything, just wrong. The air turned icy. I picked Lily up and backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off that corner. I didn't want to blink. I didn't want to even breathe. I shut the nursery door, ran to the living room, and turned on every light. Lily was still crying. I wrapped her in a blanket, held her close, and called Rachel. No answer. I texted her, "Call me. Something's wrong in the house." No reply. For a moment, I considered calling the police. But what would I say? There's a cold shadow in the baby's room? I sounded crazy, even to myself. So I waited, rocking Lily, trying not to look at the monitor. But eventually, I did. The camera had shifted again. Now it was pointing straight at the door. I had shut, but on the screen .it was open again, wide open. The crib was empty, but Lily was in my arms. That's when it hit me. The feed was showing something that wasn't possible. The door creaked behind me. I turned so fast I nearly dropped her. Nothing was there, just the air, just that same heavy silence pressing against my chest. I went to the hallway. The nursery door was closed again. I hadn't moved, hadn't gotten up, I hadn't shut it. I didn't sleep that night. Rachel came home at 6 a.m., exhausted. I tried to explain, tried to tell her what happened, but she just stared at me, said I was probably dreaming with the monitor on. I left. I won't babysit next Friday, or the one after that. But last week Rachel called. She was sobbing. "The monitor keeps turning by itself," she said, "and Lily keeps waking up screaming." She points to the closet and says, "She's back." I asked, "Who's back?" Rachel didn't answer, just breathed into the phone for a moment. Then she whispered, "You know who," and the line went dead.